My name is Chatpong Chat Chuenrudeemol, or Chat for short. I'm an architect practicing in Bangkok, Thailand. My office is called Chat Architects. Just to give you a little bit of a reference, I was born in Thailand, but at the age of 6, I moved to the United States, and I lived all the way through in the US until I graduated with a master's from architecture school in 2000. And that's really where the story begins, when I moved back to Thailand as a fresh graduate from the Western world. In the context of Southeast Asia and Thailand, as with many places in the world, we're kind of inundated with global images of architecture design. It's wonderful to have references of beautiful, innovative architecture, but it can be kind of overwhelming for a young person starting. I truly, in 2000, want to be a part of this world. I want to do work that was innovative, provocative, sustainable, green, all the tag words. And I did do work like that I thought. But then stepping back to look at all of it, it wasn't very good, I had to tell myself. And when I say good, I mean it wasn't tropical, which it should be in Southeast Asia. It lacked a cultural authenticity to Bangkok and to Thailand. And I was in a crisis. And the way I got out of it was I started to look at things around me for inspiration. Sorry. Oh, it's not moving forward. Okay. I started looking at things like this. This is a canal about an hour away from my house. You'll see a gentleman in the yellow shirt and a tourist boat just passed by, and the gentleman in yellow shirt is pulling on a pulley system, a rope, pulling one traditional wooden tie boat from one side of the coast to the other edge. Oh, I don't know why it stopped, sorry. Let me go again. And as the boat is moving towards us, people are crossing the boat. It has transformed into a bridge, right? These are the wonderful inventions that make me happy and joyful working in Thailand, is that one small little thing is flipped and hybridized and turned into another thing. These incredible inventions fascinated me, and I draw. I draw to understand. I draw not only the boats, I draw the dirty water, I draw the corrugated sheets, the stray dogs, because architecture in Thailand isn't just buildings, it's all of these things that make an environment. As an architect, I draw sections. I draw the basic drawings. This one shows how the red rope is given slack so that it doesn't get entangled in the propeller. I draw details of how that ad hoc pulley system is concocted to understand what local leftover trash materials are recycled. And in that sense, I'm able to tell the story of detail, architecture, and urbanism in just a few drawings. And I named them very simply bridge boat, because it is what it is. I've been doing research like this for a very long time, for 13 years, and I call them Bangkok Bastards. Bangkok because I love working in Bangkok. Bastards because I didn't want to use an architectural word. I wanted to use a normal person's word. So a bastard is a person who may or may not know who their parents are, no lineage, somebody who's looked down upon. A bastard architecture is a piece of architecture that has no lineage, no architect. They're basically everyday architecture created by everyday people to solve everyday problems. Like this, construction worker house. In Thailand, the construction worker house is built by the construction workers who live on site. They scavenge leftover materials, corrugated sheets, metal, old timber, to create their own domicile. But when I started to become fascinated with what I say informal architecture, I didn't want to just photograph it and to romanticize it. I went and I drew. I drew exactly the dimensions of this quote-unquote imprecise architecture. I started to understand that there was a system within this madness, that the construction worker house is composed of two elements, the core and the scaffolding. The core itself are very hot, humid, claustrophobic rooms, 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters. But what makes the living arrangement bearable is the scaffolding, this veranda element that's a buffer between sun and rain. But it also becomes multi-purpose living space. Cooking, eating, laundry, getting drunk. And once you understand this formula that the locals have created, you see them play with this formula of the scaffolding and the core. For example, this one is another construction worker house in the back of the construction site. But they've hacked the scaffolding so that there's a double roof that protects this very fragile corrugated sheet from falling hammers and nails with a double, I call it a security helmet of plywood. Once you have that formula, you start to play with it. So core, scaffolding, core, scaffolding, core. From house, it becomes housing. If they have leftover materials, corrugated sheets. They fold it into a V, it becomes a rain gutter that reflects light onto the underside of corrugated ceilings. I don't think any of this is planned. It was improvised because that's how life is. If you don't have corrugated sheets, you use construction tarp. Once the material of the skin is changed, you don't just unlock a door or twist a doorknob, you just unbutton your door and you enter into this space. Inside, with this new soft wall, there's no need to build a window that's 90 centimeters high from the floor. Because the workers are used to lying on the ground, they just peel up the wall and breezes come in at the appropriate height on the ground. So from my research in Bangkok, 8 years ago, I started to do a lot of work in the rural regions as well as the coastal regions, which brings us to the main project I want to talk about, the Angsila Oyster Scaffolding Pavilion. The site is located in Chonburi province, about an hour away from Bangkok. And as you can see here, this province has been urbanized and developed to the point where there are just cookie-cutter fenced residential homes, factories, neighborhood malls. But within this corner is this place out of time. It's a wonderful little fishing village, 200 years old, with radiating streets that bring breezes into the community. We went to research. We got to know the people, the oyster fishermen, the crab fishermen, the jellyfish fishermen, and spent about a year with them trying to get to know their lifestyle. And of course, we looked at the architecture, what I called Angsila Bastards. And we didn't only just look at architecture on land, we looked at architecture in the ocean. The oyster scaffoldings is this wonderful urbanism in the middle of the ocean. Fishermen themselves build these oyster farms out of bamboo. It's a city in the water. And once I went out there, hired a boat, the environment and the atmosphere was amazing with the ocean breezes. And as soon as the water goes down, the oysters are revealed, hung from the bamboo scaffolding. Of course, we went out and measured and drew. We drew these very imprecise structures. I asked the fisherman what the modular was, and he said, oh, it's about 2 meters. And I said, how do you measure 2 meters? He just went like this. That's 2 meters, that's 2 meters, that's 2 meters. I learned to improvise. We also looked at another incredible structure here, the ocean outpost. Basically, in an oyster farm, at night, we have oyster pirates who come in their boats and scissors, and they snip the oysters. And if you can steal an entire scaffolding of oysters, you can actually make out with tens of thousands of dollars. So the fishermen had to build a security guard outpost to guard their oysters. This one ingenious oyster, a fisherman, charges about $75 to stay overnight at your own risk. of course. You have a toilet that feeds the fish. But here's an amazing invention. The oyster fishermen would go to nearby factories to buy rejected car seatbelts and use them as binders, because seatbelts are salt-proof, waterproof, sun-proof. So it's an incredible invention, bottom up. Getting to survey the buildings, I also got to know what the problems of the fisheries community was. Basically, it wasn't just global warming and pollution in the water that was resulting in the kind of the degradation of the fisheries industry. It was actually what I call the Fishmonger Effect. You would have the middlemen who would go buy fish or oysters or crabs cheap from the fishermen at the port. They would transport them to the market and sell them at 2 or 3 times the price. But in the meantime, the transport needed cold storage, and some fishmongers didn't cold storage properly. So that resulted in very, sometimes not so fresh seafood. And the customers would blame the fishermen for being dishonest and selling unfresh seafood. I wanted to tackle that problem. And this is a wonderful gentleman. His name is Uncle Jun, who is my savior and my guide and my educator. He taught us about how to buy the freshest mussels and crabs. He took us home where his wife cooked us secret recipes of Angsila. And we thought it was just so wonderful to be able to eat fresh seafood amongst the fishermen. And that experience really inspired me to create a new prototype. A prototype that would combine the oyster scaffolding and the oyster farm outpost. A place where you can bring guests out from land to the scaffoldings themselves and eat the oysters fresh, to create a new experience, to have you understand the stories of the fishermen, and to have them prove that there are fresh oysters in the ocean. So this is the way they construct the bamboo scaffolding. These are all fishermen. First, they would have to cut the fresh bamboo from local bamboo forests and load them onto the boat. And this is how they stake each pole into the ground. Pogo stick style. Once the columns are poked into the ground, they tie the cross beams. And as you can see here, they use the seat belts and they overlap the bamboo. They never cut the bamboo even though it's too long. We don't create ocean waste. Everything is used. I almost fell. On the day of the tour, we create a new economy because we would be able to rent the fisherman's boat. Guests would get on and they would become tour guides on top of being fishermen. The first stop would be a ride through the existing oyster farms to see this incredible ocean urbanism. And then you would eventually start to see flashes of red until you arrive at the Angsila Oyster Scaffolding Pavilion. The boat will take you to the end where the lone canopy tunnel is. As you climb up the stairs and walk through this canopy, you start to see that all the materials here are the materials that the fishermen use. There's nothing imported that's foreign. The bamboo, the red rope that's used to tie the oysters. This is what I call the accelerator detail, where this is a seat belt that you can't tighten properly with a regular person's strength, so they use the bamboo rod to twist it and tighten it and tie it off with the red string. As you go down the path, you wind up at this 3-gabled open-air kitchen. But in this kitchen, there's no electricity, there's no refrigerator, there's no freezer. You basically just jump down and you pull up fresh oysters, ready to eat. And the great thing is, once we serve the fresh oysters to the guests, it's a very poignant point where we should take care of the ocean that's creating the oysters that's going into our stomachs. So Uncle Jun is able to relate his story. And not only do we serve the oysters that are grown underneath, but we're able to order pad thai and fish custard from restaurants on shore, thereby creating another economy. But this isn't a restaurant or commercial endeavor in the ocean. It's actually what we call a pop-up educational space, so that we don't break any laws. We can talk about that later. Thailand is a unique place. The best time really is sunset, when the scaffolding becomes pretty much invisible. If you look back towards the shore, you see the bamboo scaffolding in the thousands. And as you look back towards the horizon, the other side, it's open ocean. That's because we placed the scaffolding right at the seam, at the edge of the urban farms. The scaffolding isn't just for tourists, but it's actually a local hangout for local fishermen. Sometimes in early morning, once the boat tries to dock on shore, the water level has gone down so much that they can't dock their boats. So they stop and use the scaffolding as kind of rest area and a fishing spot for them and their families. It's really about just creating the simple lines that exist in the ocean environment, which becomes invisible, especially during sunset. But the story doesn't end there. This past year, July 2024, during the rainy season, a storm swept through and destroyed Angsila 1. I was quite heartbroken. But within a day after I told our guests who'd visited the scaffolding before, 110,000 baht, or $3,100, went into the fisherman's bank account, and we were able to plan for Angsila 2, a more compact scaffolding with a courtyard in the middle, because we only had 30% of the funds compared to the original. And it awaits for you to come visit. Thank you so much.